I'm recording. So I'm just going to do I'm going to cut this bit out. So I'm going to do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi folks, I'm here with Donna, and I've been trying to get Donna on for, it's been at least a couple of months. We just haven't been able to fit together, so we've fitted together today. And I just want to give you a wee brief history of my relationship with Donna and then let her say a few things. I've been going through a change of sort of emotional change and sort of physical change over the last 5 or 6 years. And I described it in one of the pieces I wrote as a dark night of the soul. I moved away from a very anxious, very angry, very stressed, workaholic person to where I am now, which is far more relaxed, far less anxious, sleeping so much better, building really strong relationships, especially with my wife. But there was a point in the middle where sort of I knew what was in front of me, but what was behind me was more familiar. And it put me into sort of a really negative state. And I found myself sitting down in Port Stewart, in a car park, looking at the sea in the middle of a storm, and just feeling really frustrated and negative. And I just went on my phone and said, "Counsellors in Port Stewart." And I rang the number, and just by chance, Donna answered it and said, "Well, I can get you an appointment next week or whatever, maybe a few days' time." And then I said, "That's great." And I put the phone down, and it still was in this state. And she just rang back. You know, you didn't need to ring back. You just chose to ring back. She says, "I can see you're struggling a wee bit, so let's talk." And sort of that built a relationship. And I went to see Donna. And to be fair with counsellors, I know sometimes it takes a long time to get to the point. But we did six sessions. And I think after that, I booked 6 more, but I only used 1. And we just got to the point where I was in really good shape. Really, I felt like it lifted the last bit of the burden I had off my shoulders, and actually gifted those other sessions to somebody else that needed them a bit more than me. So Donna has done a lot of really good work with me. I think she has a sort of a compassion that comes across when she's counselling. And I just thought it'd be really good for the people that I know and the people in my pages to hear what she had to say about, how she feels she can help people, but people can help themselves more than anything else, you know. So Donna, over to you.
Hi, David. Well, thank you so much for inviting me on today. It's a real privilege. And I want to, first of all, say that, time, circumstances, the timing was right when you contacted me.
Yeah.
And I know you often would say to me that you were the one that made the difference, but I cannot take that. It was the relationship between you and I that seemed to make the difference. You were the one that did the work. You were the one that invested in your self-care. And you were the one that very, very much knew where you were, where you had been, and where you wanted to go. Yeah. So I would say my role in that was to give you a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah.
And to clarify for you where you wanted to be.
Yeah. And there's a skill in that. There's a real skill in that, you know.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. I really appreciate that. I don't know if it's the same for you, but my screen is going a bit crazy.
No, what happens is the when I speak, mine goes yellow, and then when you speak, yours goes yellow.
Okay. I just.
Or I can still see, and everything's good.
That's perfect. And it means a lot to me because I've invested a lot of time into not only the counselling, but into self-care. And I know it may not be popular for counsellors to be saying, "You know what? I've been broken too. I am broken. I continue to have to find my glue and have to invest deeply in myself to be able to move forward." But I have been. And I do feel that a lot of people that go into a caring role or a recovery role have a story to tell.
Oh, yeah.
You had asked me before what led me to counselling. Mm-hmm. And I can say at the time, all I knew was I wanted to help people. Okay. That was my view. I'd really like to help people. No idea why. Oh, I'm good at it. You know, people relate to me. I can relate to people. But at the time, I liked people and I wanted to help. So when I was 21 and pregnant with my daughter, I did my very first certificate in counselling. And then I moved away from it. It was a 1-year course, just a basic introduction. I moved away and I went down the theatre studies route, and I knew I'd always loved therapy. I was always interested in the mind, but I was more interested in the drama therapy than being on stage in a film. I caught on quite quick that unless I was willing to live on bread and water and move to Maynooth, my drama therapy training was going to be limited to a few modules in a degree. Right. So that wasn't suitable. And after a very difficult time in my life, I decided that I needed to reinvest in me and went back to uni and did a degree in counselling. There was an awful lot of thought put into what's brought me back over the years. And I can now say that through ACEs that I come up against in my childhood, and that's adverse childhood experiences, so my traumas, it very much led me down that path. My dad was an alcoholic, an absolute angel. He wasn't violent, he wasn't cruel, he wasn't, you know, he didn't have a nastiness, but he was an alcoholic, and he went from being the perfect father, not a good father, the perfect father, to being a street alcoholic. Yeah. And my mum constantly suffered with depression and had various suicide attempts over the years. So now looking back, I think my primary focus or reasoning to go down that line was I wasn't able to help them. Yeah. I wanted to save them. So I wanted to be their savior. Yeah.
I get that. I totally get that.
Yeah. I know you've told me similar on how you got into this work.
And you know, people would find it strange that martial arts would be, so I chose martial arts because I felt that I couldn't defend myself as a child, but I learned martial arts. And the martial arts helped me help other people. Yeah, that was sort of my role. And the breathwork stuff it's martial arts. It you know, when you're taking a class, you're connecting with people, but you're not really connecting with them really deeply. When I'm working with one-to-one clients, I'm really getting to understand how their minds work. And the breathwork is just, it's the same as you use certain tools. The breathwork's my tool to actually get people, because we were having a conversation before we started to go live in this. And what I was saying was that if I had met you 4 years earlier, I wouldn't have listened to the words you said. I just wouldn't have, because there's so much in my own head. Yeah. And because I was breathing in a way that it was fight or flight. Yeah. So if you had said anything that I didn't agree with, I maybe wouldn't have verbalized it, but it would have been in my head be saying, well, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Or else I would have ran away and not came to any more sessions. So when I took myself into parasympathetic, into that rest and digest, that sort of open yourself up for relationships, that's when I think that I just hit at the right point. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right with counselors. I think that everybody has their story. Everybody has their story. And I don't know about the people that I work with, and it's just became very apparent. They are all giving people. Yeah. And then they don't leave anything for themselves. Yeah. And then they become broken because they've constantly given, because somebody's hurt them. So they think, if I fix everybody else, that'll help me feel better, which it does, but long term it doesn't, because you're still broken. Yeah. So you have to actually look after yourself, and the funny thing is that when I'm talking to you, and I have no shame in saying it, I can get a wee bit sort of emotional, because I come back to the time that I sat in this chair and sat and talked to you and cried my eyes out. Just the emotion just had to be released. When it got released, because it was trapped, because I think sometimes when you have a childhood trauma, it almost sits with me. It sits here.
Yeah.
And then when you cry, you just let it go. And there'll be people on this martial arts who go, oh, look at David Tony and whatever. But I really don't care anymore. I really don't, because who I am is not defined by sort of what people think of me. But if this helps one person, fantastic. So sorry, I cut across. So,
I think you're very brave, David, and I've noticed like a big difference in you from placing yourself under the expectations of others.
Yeah.
To being happy with who you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually accepting there's none of us perfect.
Not
I have more flaws and faults than I would say any of my clients.
Yeah.
But it's about learning to accept who you are and be who you are and choose. And that's the word, choose where you want to go.
Yeah.
So you've said, you crying doesn't define you, or it's what you've been through doesn't have to define you. And that's the difference in being a victim of your past, surviving your past, or thriving due to your past. And you very much are thriving due to your past.
Listen, we all have turmoil in our life. We all have it. There's people that I talk to and I think, God, how did they get through that? That was just so horrendous, and they're still going through it. We all have these things, but the way I look at sort of my life now, I wouldn't have the things in my life now if I didn't have the things that I had in my life before. I wouldn't. I'm really unbelievably happy with my relationship. Oh, I don't know where we dropped. Are you still there? Record again. So I'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Folks, we had a little technical fault there. So Donna's back on, this time she's on her phone, so the screen's going to be slightly different. So we're just going to restart the conversation, and hopefully it'll be almost seamless when I put the two together. What it was put across was that, your trauma is what can make you the success that you become in your later life. That I have a phenomenal relationship with my wife, and I used to hear people when they were young saying, older people saying, I have a really phenomenal relationship with my wife, and I go, how does that work? Because I didn't think anybody had that kind of relationship, but I really have a strong relationship, and I wouldn't be in the place that I am. And I have to sort of put across that as far as counsellor is concerned, Anne's my number one counsellor. She always has been. She's number one supporter, and she's helped me through some sort of traumas that I've had in my adult life and whatnot. So she's my number one supporter. I had 2 new grandchildren in lockdown, which was strange because I couldn't go to see my first grandson for quite some time. I could look through a window, but I couldn't hold him in my arms. And I have a really good family. I have really phenomenal people around me. In the martial arts, and also this new community, in this breathwork community, phenomenal people, all on the same path and all wanting the same thing. And I'm just so, as we were talking about, it's like an upward spiral. You don't know how good it is because you've never been there. But once you get there, because I was always living in anxiety, always anxious, and now things happen and you just go, huh? So. But I was also saying, and I think a lot of people who go into counselling are giving people, and they don't leave anything for themselves. Would you think that is that the same sort of?
Burnout is so common in the counselling profession, and that's because you keep going, and you may be worried about letting your clients down, or just the work ethos.
Yeah.
Have to keep going, but it's and I would say I touched on a wee bit of burnout in November. And I can say I'm very, very lucky that I had the opportunity from November to step back and really invest in my own self-care and look at, you know, what I needed as a counsellor to stay as a person, first of all, but as a counsellor, secondly, in order to be able to be with my clients without forgetting about me.
Yeah.
I am a true believer, a true believer in that the client is the one with all the answers. And it's only my job to help shine a spotlight for them, to help them focus on what is causing them depression or what is causing them anxiety. And if we look even at COVID, which has caused so many people anxiety, you know, through this whole period, because it's a time that none of our generations have ever seen before.
Yeah.
And where our very lives were at risk. So, you know, that's different. That's something most people haven't experienced. But the anxiety, you know, there's 3 wee people that live in your head. You've got your human, and that's the person that's calm and happy and logically thinking and can move forward and understand that the consequences of decisions. And then you've got the chimp. Now I'm taking this from someone else's model.
Yeah, chimp paradox.
Chimp paradox, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, one of my favorite books.
And I think we connected over that too. And the chimp is very much, it's like a smoke alarm for danger. So that danger doesn't even have to be real. It can be a perceived danger. For example, if you're thinking about dangerous things, about, you know, being ostracized from society, about, you know, people with, what's the word I'm looking for? A fibro, and you know I lose the word every now and again.
We all do.
The anxiety, performance anxiety, for example, that's nothing to do with fear of being on stage. That's to do with being made look a fool. You're made look a fool, people laugh at you, you feel that you're going to be ostracized from society, that you won't be part of the community. You know, that's, in the old days, that was a life and death situation.
Absolutely. You know, and what I have came to realize is the chimp breathes differently from the human. So if I can breathe like a human, it keeps me out of that anxiety state. And it's that whole stimulus response thing. At the start, the stimulus and response was that quick that I didn't, you know, the chimp took over like that, and I was gone, and the shoulders were back and the head was forward, and I was going to argue with everybody. But now that stimulus and that response, now I have a wee bit of choice in the middle, and I can choose to slow my breath down. I can choose to, and it's only through practice.
Of course. But one of the things that, another thing that, like, you know, I'm very into your breath work.
Yeah.
I teach my clients your breath work. Yeah. But for me, on a personal level, before I'd met you, I had, and before I knew what you were into and started going to, you know, a few of your classes to upskill myself. Yeah. I had went through, for the first time in my life, about 5 years ago, anxiety. So I would have teetered with depression on and off. The first anxiety was about 5 years ago, and it was, I had cancer way back then. Thank goodness I am perfectly fine now. But when I got out of hospital, I started having panic attacks in my sleep. Now, as a counsellor, I'd done panic attack training. Yeah. And after the first night, I was very aware that it was a panic attack. And they would say, you know, try and work out what's causing your anxiety. Well, I wasn't there because I was sleeping. I couldn't tell if it was human, if it was, you know, what it was, what my triggers were. So it was completely impossible for me to be able to work out what was triggering these panic attacks in my sleep. And the only tool I had was breathing. The only tool. And the first night it happened, I would say it was 15 minutes it lasted. The second night I started to do breathing. My breathing was erratic. It wasn't practiced. It was, but got me out maybe a little bit quicker. Now, I still have these panic attacks to this point in my life, all these years later. But now when I wake up in a panic attack, I do 2 or 3 breaths and I'm sleeping again.
Yeah.
And you have really made me think about why that worked.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I would explain to some of my clients, if I'm hiding behind a door and they come through and I jump out and, you know, like, hi, David. And they jump 6 foot in the air and they land after they've called me some choice words. After their arms come round to swing for me, to knock out the danger, fight, flight and freeze.
Mm-hmm.
Once they realise it was Donna being a plonker, you know, it's what does the body naturally do?
Yeah, just relax.
It relaxes. And the exhale breath, you know, it's longer, it's slower, it's more controlled.
Mm-hmm.
And it sends the reset switch, or it triggers the reset switch in the brain that actually says this was a false alarm.
Yeah.
You can calm down again.
Yeah. Like your analogy of the smoke alarm, you know, the smoke alarm doesn't know whether the house is burning down or you're burning some toast.
Yeah.
That's the same response.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to actually, the smoke alarm is an alarm, but you check, is there a right to be alarmed? If there's not, then you go back to your breathing. We were talking before we actually went live, and just talking about the whole sleep thing, that I was on a webinar on Sunday, and what they were saying is that people who were taking night terrors, which there's nightmares and there's night terrors, and night terrors, you can be basically fighting demons in your sleep, and actually when you come to, you've actually wrecked your whole bedroom because you're in that state. But what they found was, and I'm a great proponent of taping my mouth. For 5 years I've taped my mouth closed every single night. But what they were saying is it's almost impossible for you to have a night terror with your mouth closed, because you're breathing through your nose. It's when you start to have the night terror, your mouth's open and you're going. So if you can keep the mouth closed, you can stop the night terrors. Like for me, that was just amazing, you know,
yeah.
Because I'm very against. Now, I'm not saying I'm very against. There's a reason people need to take medication.
Mm-hmm.
To have too high reliance on medication is wrong. I think if you can do it, and you can do it naturally with breath and with food and with, Portshire Strand is sort of my church. You know, I'll walk up and down the Strand when I'm stressed. I'll drive from Ballymena to Portstewart to run up and down Portstewart Strand to calm myself down, because I'm in fight or flight, and I don't need to do it anymore, but I used to have to do it. When I'm in fight or flight, I go for a run. That's the flight. So actually, my body wants to run. So, okay, let's run. But I'll run in a controlled way, and I'll come back and I'll relax, I'll do my breathing, and I'll feel fine again. You know, so I think we sort of tie in so much as we understand how the mind works. And I come at it from one angle, you come at it from a different angle, and they meet in the middle. Because anybody that I talked to about breathwork's the tool, but they need to get over it. They need to sort of look at what the other issues are in their life. And that's why I think counselling is a key thing. I think that COVID was one thing, and many people died from it, and it is very sad. But I think this autumn, that's when it's all going to kick in, because people are going to lose their jobs. People are going to be depressed. People live for their summer holidays.
Yeah.
And they're not getting away on a holiday. And if you look at the weather's appalling. So it's going to lead to a bit of depression when the dark nights come in and there's no vitamin D, and they haven't got their money, and then maybe there might be a second wave. It was bad being locked down when we were locked down, but in the heart of the winter, in the dark nights, that's going to be 10 times worse, you know. So I think there's a storm coming with regard to mental health. I really do. And it's very sad.
You've hit on something too there, you know, what may be coming. Maybe, you know, depression's very much linked to the past. It's looking back over traumas in your life and, you know, the feeling of not being in control of them. So depression keeps you held in the past, but anxiety is also that fear of the future. Am I going to have enough money? Am I going to lose my house? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to be able to eat? Am I going to keep my family safe? So if you've got a bit of depression and a bit of anxiety, you're being pulled back and forward in that place at the top of the mountain that you were talking about before we came on screen, that you can't move forward and you can't move back. So it can be quite a dark place for people. And whether, you know, if it's breathing technique that help them stay calm through that and move forward, or if it's exploring, if it's shining the spotlight on their fears, you know, it's important, really important for people to be the masters of their own recovery.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I just think that sometimes just talking about it is all you need to do. Just talking about it is all you need to do. And you know, for me, that was a case because I have, you know, I had any god amounts of people I could have talked to about my problem, about that sort of feeling of being in a pit and not knowing how to get out. In fact, there was plenty of people around me to give me a hand out of the pit, but sort of I was quite comfortable there, so I didn't want to leave it. But it's good to talk to somebody who you don't know, who has no expectations. Never, you know, I'm not David Tony, the martial arts instructor who travels around the world teaching martial arts. I'm not David Tony, the father or whatever. I'm just David Tony's somebody we're just having a conversation.
Yeah.
And when I was in counselling with you, it didn't feel like I was in counselling. It felt like this. It felt like it was two people having a conversation, me giving you some of my concerns and worries and negative feelings, and you saying, that's okay. It's okay to feel like that.
Yeah.
You know, but what we want to do is we want to try and not live there.
Yes.
Everybody, and I think this is the case. I said I've got a phenomenal life and a really good relationship and wife and whatever. Do we argue? Yeah, we kind of do. Do I have dark days? Absolutely, 100%. But, you know, so we don't live in this Instagram world where everything's perfect with a lovely filter on it. We live in a world that can be quite shitty at times. Yeah. And if you accept that it's going to be shitty at times, and all I want to do is I want to have more sort of days, good days than bad days. Every now and again I have a bad day, but I know it's not going to last.
Very true. Very true.
Because before, what I thought when I was in a bad day, I thought that bad day is going to last for the rest of my life. It was sort of like this catastrophizing. Oh, I'm never going to get out of this. This is the way I'm going to be. And I think just having somebody who can listen and give you the appropriate advice, because the world's full of people to give you advice. Go to any bar at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, they'll give you as much advice as you want, but it's getting to the right person. It's getting the right person. And even in counselling, I think it's getting to the right counsellor, one that fits right for you. And I think you have this, it sounds like the Donna Appreciation Society, but I think you have this a personality that's you're just very personable, and you know, you can see that you're actually listening, and you know, you're not scribbling down notes or anything, that you're just listening to me talking, and it's just like having a conversation with a friend. That's what.
David, I think you've hit the nail on the head in what you said. It's, you know, about the relationship. A lot of people will try counselling, or will try, for example, breathwork, or will try a therapeutic approach, and they'll go and they'll meet with their counsellor, with their trainer, they'll go a session or two, and they'll think, no, this is rubbish, I'm getting nowhere. Or they'll stay for 20 sessions, and they'll think they haven't moved forward. I do believe very, very much that it has to be the right fit. So if you've tried with one person and you feel there's a blockage or the connection's not there, that you can actually come in and say, do you know what? I've been a dick this week.
Yeah.
Or lay down your deepest fears or regrets, or that you feel that you'll be judged, then that's not something that's going to move you forward. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things I had said to you at the beginning is, I don't have sensitive ears. and my mouth is not the cleanest. You will hear the odd swear word coming out of me, but I can't ask or expect my clients to come through, whether it be my physical door or virtual door, into our space and be themselves, as in leave their masks outside that door. If I'm sitting here on this side trying to pretend that I am holier and godlier than thou, that's not me. I've more cracks than an old Chinese vase. You know, I curse, I am who I am, but I've learned to accept that that's okay. And I can only bring me into the room. But I do believe by bringing me into the room, or if you get a counsellor that brings them into the room, they don't have to curse. But if you feel that they are a genuine counsellor that is non-judgmental, that can accept and hear you for who you are, then, and if that relationship, if you feel that you're ready to take that stage or take that step forward to be honest to yourself, because you were talking about, you know, the talking just helping. That talking's very often the first time that you're hearing your words of how you've thought, how you felt, or what you've been through out loud. So it's the very first time it's been processed. And for things to go into that filing cabinet in the brain, they need processed. So if you find somebody that you feel that you can trust to talk to, then go for it. And if there's any sort of blockage in that relationship, I'm not saying don't give it a few weeks, but it may not just be the right fit.
Yeah,
Where they can create a good fit.
Yeah, no, definitely, it just hit off on it, and I think that the issue with talking to somebody who already knows you is that they have that expectation of who you are, and that's the beauty of speaking to somebody who doesn't know anything about you. You've got a clean sheet. You've got a clean sheet, and if you're the worst person in the world, they wouldn't know, and if you were absolutely angel, they wouldn't know. They just see it as who you are when you walk into the door, and they just work with you. It's almost like a dog. A dog reads energy. You know, if you walk in and you're kind, it'll be happy. If you walk in and you kick it, it won't be so happy. But I just think that energy is everything, and it comes across. When somebody's genuine, it comes across. When somebody's a wee bit false and they're doing it for the wrong reasons, you kind of know it. You know, deep down you kind of know it. That's what puts a block. And I had a guy on sort of on this where I'm doing an interview 2 weeks ago, Sam Conley, and fitness instructor, great guy, everything to live for, and he had been a secret eater and was 20 stone, and used to go out for a meal and not eat anything and say to people, oh, I don't eat that much, and then go home and eat 2 packs of chocolate biscuits in secret. And you know, he turned his life around. And I think that when people have problems, they think, that's me, I can't get out of this. You know, they feel stuck, and they feel that I've always been anxious, so I'm an anxious person, so I can't do anything about it. I've always been depressed, so I'll always be a depressed person, so I can't do anything about it. You know, it's almost like they have been given a role. You're into acting. They've been given a role as a child. This is who you're going to be, but they're the star of their own show. So to help with what role they were given, they can take whatever role they want.
100%.
And I think that's where that's where the struggle is.
Yeah.
I think that's where the struggle is, because you're breaking free. There's a lot of resistance to breaking free from the role you've been given by other people. And you talk about the chimp paradox. The computer that's in my head was programmed between the ages of 0 and 7. I wouldn't let any 7-year-old program a computer in my house, but yet a 7-year-old David programmed this computer. So I have to some people go for a hard reset where they just break down and then rebuild. I went for a reset where I worked on it over a period of time. But we do need to reset. We do, and everybody needs to reset.
100%. You know, what you've said is so valid and so true. And when these schemas, these life stories that people have lived. You know, what I believe is you can choose once you're aware of how those traumas have affected you in the past, or how people have influenced the programming of your computer in your head, which is your habits, how you think about yourself, what you believe about yourself and the world and those around you. But others have the effect others. It's our chimp that programs the majority of that. So we don't act on it from a logical point of view. We act on it from a survival point of view. But when you become aware of all that, you have the option. Is this still working for me? Is it still keeping me safe, or is it limiting my life? And if the answer is that is life limiting for me, then you have the option to change. And that's, you know, all to do with the recovery, your recovery, and all the answers. I never ever gave you the answer. I may have asked questions, and you were always able to give me the answer of what was right for you and your recovery, and for you to feel safe moving forward. You knew, you were the one that held everything. I may have had the spotlight. I may have pointed it in the direction of where to look, or asked questions to find out what was going to help enable you to stay feeling safe, while moving in the direction that you wanted to go. So the reprogramming of your computer. You know, the fact that you've grown up and you're feeling not good enough, or have been told possibly that you're not good enough, then we hold that, because of our primary caregivers are the ones that are saying, you know, that's not enough, or you're bad, or you're ugly, or you're this, or you're that. Then you hear something often enough, it's programmed the brain into believing it. So especially people that have been through traumas can be the most giving, the most helpful people in the world. But as you said, they can end up giving everything because they love and value everybody else more than they value themselves.
Absolutely.
And I think your work and my work both connect in that middle space, as in allowing people to see that there's both the bodily response and the mental response to what's happened in the past and what's going to take us to the future. The breathing, especially alongside processing your traumas and actively choosing in your best way to recover and move forward, to get to that place where you want to be, where you can feel fulfilled and proud and happy, and actually value yourself at least as much as you value a best friend. At least as much. Then, you know, that's the baseline. That's where the baseline's perfect. And of course, people have their up days and their down days, or, as I'm sure we all went through, a bad month, a bad 6 months. But it's about realizing, you know, if you think about, you know, life's been up and then it's dropped and it's dragged along the bottom for a while and it's up, it's moving. It's like the heartbeat. If it was flatlined, we'd be dead.
Absolutely. You know, the thing is that we live between that sort of, everybody's told not to be selfish. Everybody's told not to be selfish. But I think that the barometer of that for a lot of people is set too low. So I think, you know, you need to be selfish in some way. If, you know, if somebody says, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, but you just need to rest, then being selfish at that point is exactly what you need to do. To say no to somebody who wants something from you when it's not in your best interest is exactly the right thing to do. And I think that people, especially people who need to go to counselling, what I've spoken to a lot of people about is that they'll have something that's happened in their life when they were, say, for instance, 5 years old, and they criticize the way they dealt with it when they were 5, And I asked them to go out and look, do they know anybody in their family who's 5 years old? And would you put that criticism on them? And they go, oh no, oh no way, he's only 5. But yet they won't accept that when they were imprinted with this trauma, they were only 5.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people have to start thinking in their own heads, you know, it is irrational. And your brain's trying to protect it. It is trying to protect it. My brain was trying to protect me from, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and the same thing that I would do, or did do, workaholic, but couldn't get to sleep at night because all these thoughts were in his head. Now, the point is, all the thoughts were in his head throughout the day. He just blocked them out. And when he quieted his mind, they were here, whispering to him, what about this? What about this? So workaholism is as bad as alcoholism or drug addiction or any of those things, because it diminishes you as a person and it breaks you down. What I found was that when I became less anxious and more relaxed, my relationships just opened up with the right people. They just opened up, because when you're in fight or flight, you can't build a relationship. You just can't, because you're living in fear. Are they going to leave me? Are they going to betray me? Because maybe in childhood people did leave you or did betray you. So you think that that's the way people, if you love people too much, they'll go. So the older I get, the more I'm really sort of fascinated by the work that you do. There was a point in my life that I thought, I could be a counsellor, but I don't think I have that particular skill. But I think the breathwork gives me a sort of, I support people. But somebody asked me, does what you do, is it like CBD? And I said, no, it's more like a kick up the arse. That's my style. If somebody's not doing something right, I'll question them on it. I'll question them, why are you not doing this? How are you not doing this? And it's maybe not the right track for everybody. And I don't give everybody a kick up the arse. I know when to give somebody a pat on the shoulder and when to give somebody a kick up the arse. But sometimes people just need that wee push. It's like when you're doing a parachute jump, you maybe need somebody just give you that wee push at the top to get you out of the plane. And once you're out, you're okay.
Yeah.
So listen, I've taken up quite a bit of your time. Just in finishing off, can you give some key points to people who are maybe struggling at the minute, and they either can't afford to, don't want to, or just aren't at the right time for them to go to counselling, but they need a wee bit of help. Just need, a bit of words of wisdom from somebody who's, one, been there, and two, has got the skill to help.
Well, I don't know how wise I am, but the first thing I would say is stop being so hard on yourself. We whip ourselves daily. We whip ourselves. We're not good enough. We haven't done enough. When anxiety has come into play, you can't think logically. So I think before you ever have to go to counselling, before you practice the breathing. The breathing is the one tool that you can do anywhere, that no one can take from you, and you only get better at it. So it only gives you more control. So practice breathing. If you are looking for counselling, there are a lot of free agencies out there. Unfortunately, the waiting list might be extended. Yeah. But, if I had to give somebody a piece of advice every day, get up in the morning, choose the night before when you're in your bed, what's the one thing I will do tomorrow? One thing. Make it small, make it achievable, and you set that goal for yourself. So if it's, I'm going to get up and brush my teeth and go back to bed, that's okay. Or if it's, I want to complete an assignment for uni, that's okay. But you set something that you believe you can accomplish that day, or the next day. So when you get up in the morning, if all you do is that particular day is accomplish that one thing, then our body actually reacts. It boosts the endorphins in the body and the brain, and gives us a happy feeling. So we can be a little bit proud of ourselves, even if everything else is going wrong. you know that you have done what you set out to accomplish the day before, write it down if you need to write it down, and start small. Also, chat connections. It doesn't matter if it's over the phone, if it's face to face, which isn't always possible and may not be in the future, but try and keep at least one connection a day with somebody that you care about and somebody that you know cares about you. If you don't have that connection and need to talk, you've got the Samaritans, you've got various health or helplines there. Use them, but make sure you have a connection with somebody during the day, once each and every day, a 5-minute call. And I will also am a big believer in at least one form of physical exercise a day. Now, anybody that knows me knows I hate exercise, but if that physical exercise is me out in the greenhouse, tutoring about, doing something in the greenhouse, or if it's the ability to go a walk for 5-10 minutes, that's something. So every day I will have talked to somebody I've cared about. I will have accomplished at least one thing that I set as my goal, and I will have at least 10 minutes of exercise, whether that be getting up and down the stairs or walking around the house.
Yeah.
That's the necessity. That's the basic necessity, incorporating with the breathing, that we all need to be well. If we don't have that, then we need to find ways of getting it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, 100%. One thing I'd add is that there's going to be other people struggling, and just to say hello to people. I think there's in the next coming months, we're all told that when we go in the shop we have to wear a mask. That means that people aren't going to have conversations at the till. You know, there may be an old woman who can't get out of her house, and the only time she gets out of her house is to go to the shop, and that would be her time to say, how you doing? Good to see you. And that's just broken down now, because people are, you know, they can say all the like that wearing a mask doesn't make you breathless, but for some people it does, because they go into a panic attack. I would say that if at all possible, talk to people. Just talk to people.
And how can you tell if I'm smiling?
Yeah.
You know, that smile is a connection.
Yeah.
Be able to connect with someone on a personal level. If you've got masks on, unless you can read someone's eyes, but even because of the COVID, people have physically turned themselves away from others.
Yeah.
So it's extremely important, if you can, or you see people suffering, or if you're suffering yourself, you know, try and make that eye contact with people. Smile with your eyes.
Yeah, I think you're right. Listen, it has been brilliant to talk to you. I really sort of, it was almost like another counselling session, but really enjoyed talking to you. And I know you're based down in Portstewart, but people can contact you online as well. I think I did my first session, and it was in Portstewart, and then after that it was basically online. And I got as much from it. It's always nice to make that connection and be in a room with somebody. But I thought you still came across superbly well. Even your personality shone through when we were talking over a computer, which had been something that I'd never done before. But now I'm quite used to, because of the COVID thing. Everybody does it. So I really do appreciate you coming on, and I'll see you soon.
Fantastic, and I'll send you the $5 in the post.
Okay, I'm going to